Hola amigos, it's me, Danny, the language tutor, helping you learn Spanish the easy way. Now, in this episode, I'm talking with my friend Edwin. He's a native speaker. He's going to be giving us tips on practicing Spanish, but also the native speaker's perspective on Spanish language learners. And he may even dispel a few myths. Let's jump right in. Edwin, hola, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien, buenos días, Danny.
Buenos dias. So, Edwin, you're a native speaker. Can you tell us quickly, where are you from? What is your dialect?
I I am born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I lived in Puerto Rico until I was 25 years.
Mhm.
And afterwards, I moved to the United States.
All right. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about at the beginning, um, I know this is probably kind of an obvious thing, but so many times when people here are learning Spanish, they might be in a class at school or college, and they might form a little study group, and those things are great. What do you see though? And I think this may be obvious, but what do you see personally are the benefits of really practicing with native speakers?
I think a great benefit of practicing with a native speaker is they will correct you with pronunciation, enunciation, um, right on the spot. And when they do, I don't think they're gonna do it in an angry way or anything like that. Um, and at the same time, you can hear um, how they say things,
Mhm.
and to a native speaker, a lot of things that they're not thinking about as someone who's learning the language. They're not thinking about how to say things. They're just saying it naturally. So you can get a good representation, right? Their feedback on how to say or pronounce or maybe pace yourself on saying things in that language.
Right. And so you mentioned pronunciation. What do you hear from your end? I know we typically have those more harsh consonants in English,
Mhm.
and we have so many different sounds to our vowels. So I'm assuming that probably comes out to your ear as a native speaker.
Yeah, and I'll say first, the most common ones are usually the ones that are unique to the Spanish language or to Spanish romantic languages is like the double L or that double R or the ñ. Um, those have some unique pronunciations, and when you apply English pronunciation, then those really stand out. The other thing that usually stands out a lot is vowels. There's just a very one way specific way to pronounce vowels in Spanish, and unlike English, there's variations.
Right, right. And so I've said many times to language learners, if they, especially in Spanish, now this is not necessarily the case in French or in some other languages, but Spanish seems to be an interesting foreign language for English speakers to learn, because if we can narrow our minds down to those five vowel sounds, and speak slowly enough for a while that we're really focusing on every single vowel, and then you incorporate those weird letters, that you can really start to sound pretty close. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I like what you said, slow down. Um, Maybe when you're speaking with a native speaker, just remind them to slow down
Mhm.
because we forget. But yeah, take your time, slow down, and try to focus on what you're saying and how you're saying it.
Right, right. And I remember being in Bolivia years and years ago, and I was still, I was learning, and a girl named Claudia, she's a good friend. She was kind enough to not say, "Hey, you're doing this wrong." She came to me and she said, "You know what? You're doing great, but here's the one thing that I think you could do as a next step." And I loved how she worded that. But I was making the T too harsh, and the P, because I was, in English, we're putting that air, we're saying, "T," and we're saying, we're putting that air behind it. And she said, you know, don't do that. Make it that, that. And she was really stressing. And then I said, okay, I'm going to really try that. And then so I started attempting that as my next step. And she said, wow, what a world of difference. That kind of pushed you way over the line. And I thought, how amazing when you speak with someone who is a native speaker and they hear those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's like when we hear in English, some of our Hispanic friends, we can tell they are Hispanic because a lot of times it's their L's or
Yeah.
certain ways they'll say vowels. So I think, when you speak with a native speaker, they can hone in on those things and really direct you to that next step. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. These do stand out to native speakers.
Right. Right.
And speaking of practicing with a native speaker, one of the best ways you can do that is with italki. With italki, you get personalized one-on-one language lessons with native speaking teachers. Now, this gives you the most effective learning. Now, as I've been continuing to learn Dutch, I get to meet with a native Dutch speaker and get undivided attention and personalized feedback immediately. And with more than 30,000 teachers worldwide, you can easily find a teacher for the language that you want to learn. Now, you can use their many filtering options to find your ideal teacher who can work with you on your schedule and provide personalized content for your unique needs, your interests, and your goals. And you can always find a teacher who speaks your native language as well. And the best part is, you get real conversation in the target language. And that means you're constantly improving your speaking and your listening skills, and you're gaining confidence through live interaction. And you're also learning authentic native expressions that are actually spoken in the language and not something you learned in some outdated textbook, right? Now, also, there are no subscriptions. It's pay per lesson. There are no contracts. And every user actually gets 3 lessons that are completely refundable if you're not satisfied.
Nieuwe telefoon,
Ah, sí.
porque es de telefoon. Een telefoon, een nieuwe telefoon.
Don't wait to book your italki lesson. Right now, you can buy $10 and you get $5 for free using my personal promo code, ITALKIDANNY. So, you've been thinking about that language you want to learn. Well, it's a great time to make it happen. Book your first lesson with italki today.
Next, I want to dispel something that I personally think is a myth. We hear so many times here in the States, people say things like, well, in that country, they don't like you speaking their language. They don't like you practicing, especially we hear that about France. Now they'll say, well, French people don't like it when we try to speak their language because it's a romantic language and we ruin their, and I think that's a total myth because, well, it's hard for us to know what our language really sounds like because we have meaning attached to every word. So it's tough I can't turn that off in English and just hear what English sounds like to a non-speaker. Um, so I think that's a myth. So would you say in the Spanish speaking world that people have a positive view of others attempting to learn their language?
Absolutely. I think as a Spanish speaker and maybe based on experiences, I find it more upsetting if someone insists on speaking their own language and then turn around and try to speak somewhere else. I've seen this in Puerto Rico, living there. Someone was having communication with me all the time in English. And then I saw them in a different scenario trying to speak Spanish. And I found that more offensive. Like, why didn't you try to speak Spanish with me as well? I think there's no offense. People don't get mad. I think it's more welcomed and endearing also. People, I think the set of mind is, oh, okay, they're trying. Let me help them. It's of encouragement and acceptance and bringing in with love, and not push away with hatred and offense. Absolutely not.
Right. Right. So I encourage people to find a native speaker and to try to jump into the culture. But I do want to ask you about this.
Go ahead.
And I'm thinking maybe this might need to be a topic with our next video. Sometimes you have to learn the language itself, but then you have to modify for dialects.
Yes.
Because I know I was speaking in a church in Guatemala once, and I used a word, and somebody pulled me aside afterwards, and they said, "Hey, yeah, we got what you're saying, but in this situation, we use this word." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting because that was actually different when I was in Costa Rica." I said, "Yeah, we use this word, and the forms of, for example, the word old in Spanish. We have three forms or so, and they're used differently." So let me ask you about Puerto Rican dialect. So are people going to have to make a big adjustment when they come?
So if the kind of dialect that you're learning is more like from South America or Mexico, yes, you will have to make some adjustments. There are different words that are used. It's just we know the same words. It's the meaning that we apply in that region is different, and sometimes that meaning can be different. It could be maybe offensive, or it's just means something completely different within the cultural context. And a lot of times it's not that the word means something completely different. We know sometimes understand what they mean, but in the cultural and the day-to-day context, it has a different meaning. And initially where people will go to in their minds is to their cultural context and then realize, oh, wait, they're from somewhere else. I think I know what they're trying to say.
Right.
But the first reaction would be what is happening around culturally to us.
Yes. Okay. So people should not be afraid, because I think this is obvious to you. This person's not a native Spanish speaker. So there's going to be a big clue if they use a wrong word or a word, even if it's offensive. I think people are going to have common sense enough to go, okay, that they didn't mean that. Am I right about that? So,
And we can hear the context of the sentence and how that one word stood out and was out of place and didn't make sense within the context of what is being said. So people understand and will use a better judgment.
right. Yes. Okay. So the bottom line here is it's okay. I said this recently. You're going to make mistakes, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay to make mistakes. We all make them.
That's right.
I do it all the time, trying to speak English.
Yeah. And I think I said on the last video that I made a mistake. I've made so many mistakes, and I can name one that was really not nice, but it was in France. It was in French, and everybody in the family they told me, and we all laughed about it and went on. It's not a big deal. So the pressure is off everybody.
Yeah, you'll just have a fun story to tell later.
That's right. And people will laugh and have a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we'll make our next video where we can bring Robin in and say, hey, all right, what does this word mean in this country? And how is it different in this country? I think that would be a fun topic.
I think it'll be a fun topic. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Edwin, for being with me today. Muchas gracias.
Un placer.
Special thanks to my amigo Edwin for his thoughts on this lesson. And join us next time as we talk about words that mean one thing in this country, but something totally different in another country. You do not want to miss that lesson. In the meantime, I want to wish for you and all your family and friends paz y bendiciones, peace and blessings. Hasta pronto.